Okay, can you hear me and see me okay? Hey, I'm talking now, clapping my hands. Hey? Okay. Could you see me clapping myself? Could you see me clapping my hands? Okay, fair enough. That's probably the way it works. Okay, well, I'm not sure how many people are actually on the chat. So hopefully this will work. So it won't be a moment to I got to check something else. New software. I did a test stream and it worked, but not sure whether that's working the way it should. Hi, Keith. Let's see. Yeah, there is a little bit of a lag, but hopefully it won't be too much. Hey, Sal, let me know if you can see this when it comes up. Cool. So I'm going to start anyway. Yep, that's it. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to start the stream. We've got some technical issues, but we're going to muddle through. Hi, and welcome to Terry Talks Movies, the December live stream where I summarize 2022 and tell you what's happening. I've got a whole bunch of data and lists and things like that about the year in review. So probably good to get started. Let me see. Haven't finished my coffee yet, so cheers. Okay, got to do this because I always do this. Wrong one. Marabunta. There we go, that's better. So yeah, hell of a busy year for the channel, and thank you to everybody who subscribed and watched live streams and watched the videos and contributed via Patreon and sat through the ads so I get a little bit of ad revenue. The channel's expanded. We've got about 2,000 more subscribers than we had at the beginning of the year, which is wonderful, and I really appreciate that. But it's it's been an odd year. There's been a few issues, a lot of personal stuff going on, but yeah, it's been a pretty good year. I'm going to take these headphones off because I don't particularly need them. So a lot of movies. I watched 305 movies so far in 2022. It's not a record for me because at one stage I watched over 400. Not sure what happened that particular year, but I will post you a link to my Letterboxd so that people can see which movies I actually watched in 2022. And here is the Letterboxd link, which will come through in a couple of seconds. Anybody else on the chat besides Keith? That's the odd thing, because anybody else on the chat, just shout out and let me know, because I can't see what's actually happening here as far as the chat's concerned. And it annoys me. I'm really sorry. This new software, it works really well. It does totally marvelous things. What it doesn't do is kind of work without lag. And that's a bit of a problem for the channel right at this very moment. Sorry, I'm just trying to do tech support as well as managing the channel. Hey, hi, Friday James. Yep. Hi, JT Ram. So thanks for everybody for bearing with me on this one, because the one thing I wanted to do with the live streams is be able to put up things, and so I can put up graphics now on a live stream, and that's one of the things I wanted to do. I went on a very steep learning curve with this software, but it seems to be functioning, so we'll keep going on. I wanted to be able to do things like this where I can pop up graphics when I want to. I've preloaded all the graphics. I've done lots and lots of stuff to get this thing working, so we'll see how we go. So yeah, 2022, crazy year. A lot of changes in cinema as well, which is one of the things. Hi Hans and North Dakota. I flew over North Dakota once upon a time in 1998. But Zoe Adams, hi Keith. No, I'm glad it's not just you, Keith, because that'd be lonely for the both of us, apart from Middle-Aged Geek Girl, of course, helping out. So it's been a weird year in cinema. People are slowly going back to cinemas after COVID, and of course COVID still isn't over. But I know a lot of people are very reluctant to go back into cinemas. I'm lucky I can get fairly cheap tickets to cinemas where the seats are well spaced and there's a lot of air around, so you've got the separation. But yeah, it's a virus that came out of a wet market in Wuhan has changed cinema. And that's a weird thing. It's unintended consequences, I suppose. Hi, Ola Greg. Yeah, so, yeah. And I'm kind of gauging and I'm evaluating those changes in cinema. I'm seeing less movies in the cinema than I did for the simple reason that I don't want to go into the cheap cinemas in that sense, because the seats are, of course, closer together, but you can separate if the movie cinema is not particularly busy. But there are a number of other annoying things, like there are more ads in the cheap cinemas than in the gold class ones we have here. So you sit through like 23 minutes of ads before you see the movie. And I know that's an economic thing that the cinemas have to do, but it annoys the hell out of me. So cinema is changing. We're seeing more things on streaming, and more things are coming out on streaming. For instance, one of the movies it's on my best list, Glass Onion, the sequel to Knives Out. I saw it in the Gold Class Cinema a week and a half ago. Great movie. I'm going to talk about it a bit more later. But it's going to be on Netflix in about a week or so. I think around 26th of December. And that's a very fast turnaround because Netflix made the movie and decided they were going to show it in cinemas for a brief period of time. And I wanted to see it in cinemas. I was enthusiastic about the movie, and rightly so. It's a good movie. But it's, the model is changing. The economic model is changing. The quality and the way movies are made and the kinds of movies that are made are changing a lot. Hi, FG. All Greg, my favourite cinema closed down. I go to another cinema, but it's not the same. That's something that's been happening all my whole life, ever since VHS started. I think that cinemas progressively are closed down. It's one of those things you talk about with your friends. What would you do if you were a billionaire? And for me, I'd be renovating and reopening old cinemas and showing old movies in them. A number of people have done that. Tarantino's done it with the New Beverly in Los Angeles. I know that George R.R. Martin's done it with a cinema or two in Albuquerque, where he's renovated the cinemas and turned them into repertory cinemas. But again, you're trying to stop the tide rising by building a little bit of a wall. It's really not going to work in a larger context. I think that cinemas are changing. Will cinemas still exist in 10 years? I don't know, but I hope that they will, because I love them. And I hope that the market is still there for people to go into cinemas and watch it. And hopefully we find a way to better deal with this virus as well. But 2022 is that pivot point for me where I'm not sure cinemas are going to survive. And that's kind of sad. It really is a weird thing. By the way, I've got to thank a couple other people. Thank all you for watching. Thanks for the subscribers and the people who support the channel in other ways. But also thank you to Middle-Aged Geek Girl, who has done a lot of support. She talks to me about what I'm going to put up at the channel. She does the Livestream admin as well. She helps out and hopefully keeps the sex bots off the chat in the live stream, and she also reminds me to stay on track with things. So I'm really looking forward to doing more things next year and having her support, because, by the way, she has a channel. Middle-aged Geek Girl, could you please put up a link to your craft channel on the chat so that if anybody's interested to it, they can save it and maybe go and watch some of your groovy content. So yeah, High Digital Pollution, thanks for staying up for this one. So yeah, cinema's changed a lot, and the way we access movies has changed a lot. And I think that we've got to adapt to that change. I mean, you can whinge about it, you can rail about it, you can scream at the clouds about it, but ultimately we're going to have to find a way to adapt to it. And that brings me to the other changes coming through, in that physical media, like buying discs of movies, is under threat at the moment. And so the market for that is changing as well. Won't be a second, just going to have a sip of drink. Yeah, so that's changing. The big movies are still coming out on disc. They're coming out on 4K as well. JB Hi-Fi is our main outlet here in Australia to access those things. Though there are some small players, like a place called Play in Melbourne City, which basically imports movies and sells them at a premium. There we go. There's Middle-Aged Geek Girls channel. But, there's only like one company, really, that is putting DVDs on the shelves here in Australia. Fortunately, it's a company with a lot of outlets. Though I have seen some JB Hi-Fi outlets that simply don't carry physical media anymore, particularly in the posher suburbs of Sydney, where people are kind of satisfied with streaming services, I think. Yeah, hi, Franny James. Thank you for subscribing. It's one of those things where physical media is changing, and a couple of companies, I'll talk about that in a sec, Keith. A couple of companies have really changed their model in distributing videos. Excuse me, just got to not used to talking for this long anymore. So Imprint's the first one here in Australia, at least. I know that Kino Lorber and Criterion and all the other guys overseas are doing a lot of stuff, but here in Australia, Imprint are producing 6 or 8 releases a month with limited amounts of them. So there might be 2,500 copies of them. By the way, they're sending me some freebies soon, so I'm quite pleased with that. And thank you to Imprint for doing that, and Viavision, their parent company. So they're putting out premium releases. They cost more than just buying a normal movie in a JB Hi-Fi or buying it online from the company itself. The cough isn't muted anymore. I'm going to mute the cough. See, if I do this, it should work to mute the cough. Did that mute the cough? Yeah, so basically Imprint is doing that, and Viavision, the parent company, is also putting out a lot of releases that don't appear under the Imprint banner. They're doing some very obscure TV series releases and things like that. So we've still got that going, but it's become a niche thing. It's become a boutique thing. I can't get all of the Imprint releases that come out because I simply can't afford it. But I cherry pick each month and pick out the ones that I'm going to watch and enjoy and maybe talk about on the channel. So that's one of the 2 companies that are doing it. The second one is Umbrella Entertainment. That's sent me a lot of stuff. It really has supported the channel in a big way. And, of course, it's a bit of a circle jerk because I'm supporting them by letting people know what their releases are. And they're putting out a lot of good stuff, and they're also putting out more and more premium product. Things like, let me just grab the nearest Umbrella Entertainment thing. Things like the Limey, which is really great. A limited edition, 250 of these were made. You can see it down there, 250. But they put out a really premium product. It's got the J card on it. It's got a slipcover. It's got a flippable cover with really great things. Tons of extras. Premium product being put out by Umbrella Entertainment. And there are weird little niche cults forming around this kind of stuff. There are people online who are really into slipcovers and collecting slipcovers. Apparently, and I only have this under hearsay from a couple of other channels, people are actually buying and selling slipcovers for movies on eBay for a crazy premium price, like $200. There are really weird niche things that are happening in the physical media space, which are kind of interesting. But Umbrella Entertainment is putting out a lot of stuff. They're putting out a lot of Australian stuff that wouldn't get released otherwise, which is fantastic. And most of that stuff, if not all of it, is multi-region. So if you're into exploitation, or even just into Australian cinema beyond exploitation, beyond that niche exploitation market, Umbrella Entertainment is doing a lot of that. So a lot of that stuff is changing. And it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I think that online buying and selling will change. So if JB Hi-Fi makes a decision at some stage to no longer sell things, they'll probably sell them online, but not in physical stores. And then Via Vision and Imprint and Umbrella Entertainment will probably go purely to an online buying and selling market, which for me isn't a big change because I get a lot of my stuff online as it is. But there's still that wonderful thing that we used to get when video shops were open, of browsing the shelves. And browsing the shelves is something that I always like doing in video shops. I still do it in JB Hi-Fi, even if I don't buy anything. I like cruising around the shelves of Blu-rays and DVDs and just seeing what they've got. It really is. Yeah, hi Lee. How you doing in Wales there? Yucky da, dude. So we still have that here in Australia, which a lot of places don't. I believe America has moved away from kind of outlet stores that sell physical media. But for me, it's great. I'm finding a whole bunch of new things. I'm finding a lot of old things that I knew about and that I liked, but that weren't available in any kind of good way. And I'm picking them up as I can. So hi, Michael, and hi, Lee. Berkeley, California. I went to Berkeley. I took a train to Berkeley once from San Francisco into Berkeley on the train. And then I went back again. So, yeah. And we've got a cat at the door, so I wonder if Middle-Aged Geek Girl is going to let Luna in. John Monahan, dumpster fire at Disneyland. Yep, there are always good trends and not so good. Absolutely. I think that we've got to adapt to the trends. I can't influence the trends. I can influence how people feel about the trends through the channel. But ultimately, it ain't my ability to be able to change the trends in cinema. So I'm going to start talking about the best things I watched in 2022. Now, I've got 4 categories. I've got best documentaries, best fairly new releases that I've watched, best older films that I've watched for the first time, and I've got a worst list, which is the one I'm going to concentrate on the least. Now, I'm going to open this bottle again. The elite shops with books, CDs, and DVDs are browser heaven, especially charity shops. Yeah, I've actually got a charity haul that I picked up yesterday when Middle-Aged Geek Girl and I went out for a little bit of a cruise around the other side of the city. And I picked up some okay things. I spent about $30 all up, but I got a lot of stuff. And a bargain is always a bit of fun. Of course, you can't pick it in. Yep, the little girl is in. Middle-Aged Geek Girl has just let Luna in. Have I seen 74 called M-Play? Yeah, Brian, I have. I saw it in the 1970s. I believe it has been released by Umbrella. In fact, I'm sure it has. A while ago. It's very much kind of, it's almost like a filmed play in the sense that it's in one house for the duration of it, but it does ramp up the tension really nicely. Digital Pollution says, my Blu-ray of Walter Hill's The Driver came in the post today. Looking forward to watching it with special features. Absolutely. Is M-Play? Yeah, it's an Australian movie. It is an Australian movie. I tell you who's in it. Let me think. I think John Waters is in it, amongst other people. Oh, Mish, $20 super chat. I am amazing. Thank you. I try to be. I fail miserably most of the time, but I do have my moments of amazingness, and thank you very much. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. So I'm going to do the documentaries first, because there were some great documentaries that I watched in 2022. And it brings me to the dichotomy of Netflix. There's a weird thing with Netflix where they have some really, really ordinary movies that they're producing themselves. And I'm going to go into that in a little more detail a bit later. But they also have some really crazy good documentaries. And I'm amazed at how good the documentaries are. And they're documentaries that wouldn't get a lot of oxygen unless they were on a platform like Netflix. And Netflix does some great things. Netflix does some pretty ordinary things. But there's been some documentaries. Some of these are on Netflix, some of them aren't. And I'm just going to go through the list. Now, I've actually got graphics, so I'm going to play with my graphics now, which sounds wrong but isn't. And the first documentary I'm going to talk about, and watch this, this is going to work wonderfully. The Witch of King's Cross, which is about a woman called Rosalind Norton who was in the middle part of the 20th century, a witch in King's Cross, which is the Bohemian area just on the outskirts of the Sydney CBD. This documentary by Sonia Bible is really good, and it celebrates Rosalind Norton, who was a witch. She was also an artist. She also got hammered by the conservative powers that be in Sydney at the time. She had sadomasochistic relationship with an orchestra conductor called Eugene Goosens, who was in charge of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. He got thrown out of the country for bringing S&M material into Australia. A really good documentary about a hidden piece of Australian history. And one of the things I like about it is it has a lot of things that demonstrate the life of Rosalind Norton. But it shows how much we've changed as a society and how we've become more embracing of diversity and different kinds of people. That one was on Amazon Prime, so you can probably find it on Amazon. It's a big recommend from me. Let's have a look at the chat before I go on to the next one, so I'll get rid of Rosalind Norton. Friday says, I live in a flat over a sex store. Yes, they do pronounce it that way. For those not in the UK, sell second-hand DVDs, Blu-rays, and they have them in Sydney as well. When we were up in Sydney a couple of years ago, there was one up at Warringah Mall where there were a whole bunch of movies and things. Yeah, I wish there were more of them, but I'm not sure that the business model still exists here in Australia for it. Yeah, Friday says, Witch at King's Cross is fantastic. Absolutely, it really works well. Small budget documentary, but I really like the thing. Yeah, Lee, Rosalind Norton's artwork is great, and it sells for a premium. The art books of Rosalind Norton's art are selling for crazy bucks these days, and I'm glad that there was a documentary that celebrated her life and gave her the redemption arc that she well deserved, because she didn't hurt anybody. She lived a life connected. How's this? I left some folks in the other chat. Sorry, jackass. Our internet is going a bit wonky at the moment, so hopefully now you're seeing circles. Hopefully it's reconnected. So, okay, so we'll see how we go with this. I think we're doing okay now. Oh, I hate it when this happens. Sorry about this, people. But yeah, we need to talk about Cosby, which is a good documentary about how black people perceive the transgressions of Bill Cosby. And he talks to a number of the women who have made the accusations, and I lean toward believing the victims and believing that people are coming forward with that stuff. Because unless you're a very damaged person, nobody's going to put themselves through that ringer. Okay, Circle of Death's gone. Thank you, Mr. Londell's Groovy Movies. And thank you, Brian. Thank you for everybody for bearing with this. Technology isn't perfect. Art books picked up a double LP art book called The Pentateuch of the Cosmology. Really out there, music and art too. Yeah, there are. I've got a few art books around, but I don't have enough of them. But I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of collecting them, because I'm trying to clean up the man cave. I'm going to do a whole renovation of the man cave. It's going to look new in 2023. But I recommend the documentary about Cosby. Not a comfortable subject, but I think it's one that people should be talking about. I think it's important to give it some oxygen. So let's see what else we've got. While we're on the subject of bastards like that, there was a 2-part documentary that I saw, which was very confronting, but I'm fascinated with the worldview that it comes with, and it's this one. Jimmy Savile, a British horror story, which is on Netflix as a 2-parter, I think, which talks about the English celebrity who was ubiquitous on English television in the 60s and 70s and 80s and into the 90s and the 2000s. Jimmy Savile, who was abusing women, children, all sorts of people under the cover of being a humanitarian, a philanthropist, helping charities, doing TV shows to help people. And it's one of those documentaries that, in retrospect, you can see what he was by looking at the old footage. But it has a deep, disturbing creepiness in the way that certain people can gaslight not only individuals, but groups of people and whole societies. I'm really fascinated with that phenomenon and the way that people who don't have the best interests of others at heart can gaslight people. Yeah, absolutely, Lee. The Savile thing was an open secret. There were people like Johnny Rotten who talked about this. John Lydon talked about this and got banned from the BBC because of it. Keith F. says, I was in Scarborough, England yesterday where Savile was buried. Yeah, well, Savile really did scar a nation, and not to mention the individuals upon whom he enacted egregious things. It's one of those documentaries that I think is important, but it's not the kind of documentary that I'm going to watch twice. So there's that one as well. And let me see. Let's try something a bit more positive. Gilbert, 2017 documentary about Gilbert Gottfried. Very eccentric character. I love his podcast, Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal Podcast, and that he did with Frank Santapadre. But the Gilbert documentary is about the man behind that. And yeah, he's eccentric. He had 2 kids. He had a loving wife. He was his own person. He had a sister who was a very well-regarded photographer, and she died, unfortunately, of cancer. And they talk about the family and the man behind the comedy. And I love this documentary because it's one of those documentaries that shows the human side of an artist, and it shows how humane and how good a person he was. And I'll have a great fondness for this documentary for that reason. Gilbert Gottfried wasn't everybody's cup of tea. He was transgressive. He made jokes about 9/11 2 weeks after 9/11 and got shit-canned for that in a big way. But I think that boldness is part of what I like about him as well. And the Gilbert documentary, if you can find a copy of it, I think it's going to be one that you really enjoy and that will stay with you for a while as well. Now, the 5th one I've talked about, and I did a video about this not too long ago, and it got bugger all views, which is always a wonderful thing. And it's Elvis Mitchell's Is That Black Enough For You?, which is about the history of black cinema in America, and talking about it from a cultural context, talking about blaxploitation, talking about movies before blaxploitation that addressed issues of race and were made by people of colour. Really solid documentary. As I said at the time, it's one of those documentaries where you're going to have a notepad and pen and you're going to sit down and write down the titles of movies that you haven't seen. And in fact, I did that and I bought a few of them. And some of them were better than others. But I like what this one did with its subject matter and with the lifting the prominence of movies that really do need to be watched again and do need to be well regarded. That was really a fun one for me because being a movie buffer and doing what I do, this movie is right in my wheelhouse. So they're the 5 documentaries I really like this year. Absolutely Digital Pollution. It's a fine documentary. It's well put together. It's a very personal view by Elvis Mitchell about his relationship to the movies as well, in the same way that Scorsese's documentaries about cinema were about his way of seeing it. And so, so that's the documentaries that I've got at the moment on my list. Just let me take another sip of water and I'll mute myself while I do, because you don't want to hear me slurp. Okay, that's better. Yep. So we'll move on to the best new movies that I watched in 2022. There are a number of them, and they are all worth checking out. I actually end up with 9 of them rather than 5 for that one. And these are in no particular order. First one I've got is, did you get a graphic for this? I didn't get a graphic for this one. It's Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho, which, if you haven't seen it, it kind of mixes time travel with ghosts and with a kind of basic horror storyline and merges them. It's about a young woman who moves to London from the provinces, and she starts art school in London, and she doesn't really fit in. And then one night she goes out into the night and ends up in 1965 London in the body of a young girl who wants to be an entertainer. Beautiful young girl played by Anya Taylor-Joy. And she kind of flicks every night. She flicks into the life of this young woman and experiences swing in 60s London through the eyes of this young woman. And things take a very dark turn. And then there's a genre twist in the rear third of the movie, which really takes it into a different area and solves some of the mysteries and gives us a sense that even though there was a lot good about the 60s, there were also very dark aspects to it. Yeah, it does become a murder mystery jackass. And I love the music in it. The music's great. The title of the movie is from a song by Dave D. Dozy, Beaky Mick and Titch. And it really was a great watch. I ended up getting the Blu-ray of it. There isn't a 4K release here in Australia, at least. But Last Night in Soho, go in with no more information than I just gave you, and you're going to enjoy the movie. It does some fantastic things with blending computer-generated stuff with real stuff, moving through the time periods. Really great. Let's have a look at the chat for a bit. I used to love Living Let Die on a Small Child. Went back and rewatched it. It's such a poor echo of blaxploitation jumping on a bandwagon. I agree, Franny. Absolutely. It's white person's blaxploitation in a sense. Mr. Shannonite, sorry I'm late. Just been rehearsing a musical version of The Thing. Been cast as Fifth Husky. My song is that a probe or is that your nose? Thank you. Yeah. Is there a song about Owl It Bit My Hands Off? Because that would be great. Yeah, so Last Night in Soho is the first one. And again, I got a cough because I have postnasal drips, so like snot drips down the back of my neck. I know you don't want to talk about this, but it makes me cough more than normal when I'm talking. Second movie is The Green Knight, which came out about a year or two ago. It's a retelling of the story of Gawain and the Green Knight. Thank you, middle-aged giggle. Too much information. But it stars Dev Patel as a young knight who goes up against the Green Knight. The Green Knight gets his head chopped off by the knight and then says he's going to return the blow in a year. And the knight goes on a quest to try to find the Green Knight and stop him from cutting his head off in a year's time. Another song, what's in that Petri dish? Yeah, but The Green Knight is great, and the less you know about it, the better. It's shot with lighting that would have been in medieval times, so you basically diegetic lighting, so lighting coming through windows and lighting from candles and fireplaces. It builds up a beautiful mood, and the last chunk of it flips the narrative in an interesting way. If you haven't seen it, and you're kind of dithering about seeing The Green Knight, really fascinating film. It's got some supernatural horror in it. Of course, it's medieval stuff. It's English folklore and Welsh folklore as well. But The Green Knight really did amaze me. I did a talk about it for a science fiction discussion group called the Nova Mob, where I talked about different versions of the story of Gawain and the Green Knight. And it got very well received. But yeah, it's a kind of hidden gem that people have forgotten about in the last year or two. But for me, it worked really well. The next movie I've got is one that you're going to want to see. Now, I want to try to grab a graphic of this one, so bear with me. It hit Netflix, but it's not a Netflix movie in any sense. Let's have a look here. Just be a few moments because I want to get an image of this one. And I should have done it beforehand, but I didn't. But I think it deserves to have a graphic. And yes, I know this is fascinating content, but bear with me for a moment while I figure around with software.